Just like politics, all news is local, and that's certainly the case on Idaho Matters, the weekday public affairs podcast from Boise State Public Radio. Listen today to hear about events and issues that impact Idahoans. Search Idaho Matters wherever you get your podcasts.
From Boise State Public Radio, this is The Connector. It's Idaho's Daily News. Good morning. I'm George Prentice. You're going to need to hear the all-important weather outlook. There's more riveting testimony in the trial of the women challenging Idaho's anti-abortion laws. And they're talking salaries over at Boise City Hall. Just how much should the mayor and the city council make? It is Wednesday, the 20th of November, and here are today's stories. We've got quite the weather maker gripping the region this morning. Stephanie Henry is over at the National Weather Service office.
Yeah, so we do have a very strong low-pressure system sitting along the Pacific coast, moving into the Pacific Northwest. We've seen extreme winds along the coast there. We're starting to get some of those strong winds coming into eastern Oregon and southwest Idaho. We've seen gusts anywhere from 30 to over 50 miles an hour in some places. Wow. We're expecting those winds to continue at least for another couple of days, but the peak of it will be today and then a little bit tomorrow. But we are seeing some precipitation starting to move on in, and our mountains will be very favorable for getting quite a bit of upslope precipitation up there with this very, very moist system. So we are looking at several inches of snow, at least today, over the mountains. Potentially some places could see even over a foot. Wow. But snow levels will start to rise tonight and into tomorrow, so that could cause some forecasting challenges for us. Rain will start to transition for the mid and low elevations there. And a lot of the valleys, too, is another forecast challenge. A lot of the valleys are starting to see some of that, because of the strong winds, we're starting to see some of that shadowing effect. So we're not seeing quite as much precipitation in some of the sheltered valleys, like, for example, Boise, as we normally would in situations of storms that contain a lot of moisture.
Oh, my goodness. And how long? So is this going to stick around for, well, how long?
Yeah, so it's currently stalled along the west coast there, and it's going to continue to bring several impacts to the Pacific Northwest, not just up here, but down in California, too, the Sierra. So that low will sit there for several days. We won't see a movement of the low until possibly this weekend. Wow. We'll start to see a cold front move through at some point this weekend, so our snow levels will lower. We'll continue to see breezy winds off and on. And we do have showery snow potential for Boise after those snow levels come back down. So we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Wow. So there is a chance of some white stuff possibly for the weekend.
Yeah, we could see something. Otherwise, this system, because it keeps getting warmer and warmer each day, we might see a little bit of rain. Even it might overcome some of the wind and shadowing effects. But yeah, we're not going to see as much as the mountains, that's for sure. The mountains are going to get hit with quite a bit of precipitation.
And that is Stephanie Henry this morning. And some good news. The Weather Service says we may break free of our drought status in the coming year. Troy Abbey explains.
Down water years starting in 2020 triggered severe drought status for much of Idaho. Last winter, a strong snowpack powered some recovery, notable because it happened with a warmer El Nino pattern. Moderate to strong water reserves in most reservoirs right now means the state is poised for another good year if it gets some help.
La Nina is favored, then 75 or so % chance of that continuing through the winter.
That's Troy Lindquist with the National Weather Service presenting to the State Water Supply Committee yesterday. A cooler La Nina pattern means much of the state could get more precipitation and cooler temperatures this winter. And that's good because in about half of water basins across Idaho, eastern Oregon, and western Wyoming, above-average snowpack is needed to meet water demand this coming summer. Erin Wharton is a hydrologist with the National Resource Conservation Service.
On the Boise Reservoir, we expect about 55% of the water to come from stream flow this year. In Magic, Littlewood, and Salmon Falls Reservoir, we're looking at about 70% of the irrigation water is coming from stream flow.
La Nina conditions can vary, but even weak La Nina years typically bring above-average snowfall to most of Idaho. Troy Oppie, Boise State Public Radio News.
4 women and 2 physicians are suing the state of Idaho, saying its laws banning nearly all abortions are confusing and go against women's constitutional rights. The doctors argue the law should be clarified to include exceptions for patients with complications, pre-existing conditions, and lethal fetal diagnoses. Yesterday, the court met for the 4th day of testimony. Reproductive medicine historian Dr. Shannon Whitcomb was on the stand. She testified that in 19th century America, whenever physicians were faced with choosing between the life of a pregnant woman or the life of a fetus, they chose to save the woman.
In 1889, when the Idaho State Constitution was ratified, it was widely understood in America that abortion was a legitimate medical practice and that physicians had full discretion over when they thought it was necessary to preserve the life or health or future fertility of a woman.
The plaintiffs also brought in Dr. Jennifer Payne. She is a reproductive psychiatrist.
Pregnancy can trigger, worsen, or initiate a significant psychiatric disorder in susceptible women. And those women should not be excluded from abortion care.
Payne said the language of the abortion bans is unclear and narrow, excluding women with certain psychiatric conditions from receiving abortion care.
And that particular fact will lead to increased mortality and morbidity for women who are pregnant with psychiatric conditions in Idaho.
The plaintiffs are expected to rest their case today. That will be followed by arguments from the state attorney general's office on behalf of Idaho. Meanwhile, in another courtroom, this one in Teton County, Wyoming, a judge has ruled that state's anti-abortion laws are unconstitutional. Hannah Mersbach reports.
Julie Burkhart was ecstatic when she heard the news. She says this means her clinic can keep providing abortions. She's the president of Wellspring Health Access in Casper, which serves patients from across the region.
I think this is a great day for bodily autonomy. This is a great day for freedom.
The Wyoming judge said that the state's 2 abortion bans, which never fully went into effect amid legal challenges, are unconstitutional. She said they infringe on the rights of an entire class of people, pregnant women, and keeps them from making their own health care decisions. But backers of the laws like Marty Halverson disagree.
Abortion is not health care, and Wyoming Right to Life is looking forward to the appeal to the Wyoming Supreme Court.
Wyoming's governor has directed the Attorney General to start that appeal process. For the Mountain West News Bureau, I'm Hannah Mersbach.
They were talking salaries at Boise City Hall last evening. The current pay structure for mayor and city council expires next year, so they need a new 5-year plan. Here is Councilman Jimmy Halliburton proposing that increases be in line with city staff, 3% a year.
And my recommendation is that we align the base wage increases that we offer to general staff during that 5-year period of time, and that we do a 3% base adjustment year after year going forward.
The city council positions are part-time. As for the full-time mayor, the salary in 2026 would be just over $177,000. It would climb with 3% increases each year to just over $205,000 in the year 2031.
And then it doesn't actually go into effect until after next election in January when people are sworn in. So it actually doesn't affect any of us until the next election.
The formal proposal would come before the council for approval in early December. Idaho State's newest revenue forecasts have collections during the upcoming fiscal year to be pegged at more than $6.1 billion. And James Dawson has that story.
That prediction comes from the Legislative Services Office Budget Division, which is the nonpartisan office advising state lawmakers on their spending plan. The division's manager, Keith Bybee, pointed to strong growth beginning in fiscal year 2026 and beyond in a presentation to the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee.
The legislature did a really nice job of managing its finances and really kind of minding the store on that front.
He also complimented lawmakers on keeping a healthy reserve balance and not spending beyond its means in recent years. Idaho is predicted to close this fiscal year at the end of June with $142 million in cash. Agencies have requested a 4.5% spending increase for the upcoming budget, totaling more than $5.5 billion. Lawmakers will start considering those proposals in January. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
And that is today's episode of The Connector. I'm George Prentice. We'll see you back here Thursday. To stay in touch with the news between now and then, check out BoiseStatePublicRadio.org or download the free Boise State Public Radio app. And for goodness sakes, tell your friends about The Connector. And thanks for listening.
If you like podcasts like this, explore more from the Boise State Public Radio podcast family. There you'll find a mix of daily news, Idaho Voices, and in-depth series on a wide range of topics. I'm talking wild horses, political scandals, sustainable ranching, and militia groups in a post-January 6th world. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Boise State Public Radio to find what Idaho's NPR station has in store for you.